Welcome back, everybody, to RelaxRV. Hi, my name is Paul. I'm doing a podcast on stress while RVing. And I know none of you have ever experienced anything stressful while RVing. Well, perhaps a little bit. Now, stress means different things to different people, and what stresses one person out may just make another person laugh. And for that, I'm jealous. So let's talk about stress and RVing. So welcome back, everybody. Paul Sebastian, registered nurse, retired, stress management consultant, RVer, grandfather, and all of that. So let me just start off by letting you know I met a woman up in Albany, New York, her and her husband, Gina, and she runs a non-profit that brings yoga and mindfulness to first responders and frontline workers. So, hi, Gina. And if you're interested or know anybody that would benefit, please pass them over to at Courageous Warrior Coalition, all one word. And I have a link in the show notes right at the beginning for you. Thanks for all you do, Gina. It's much needed. So, before we went on this trip, we changed the oil, or I changed the oil on the motorhome and our two cars. It's pretty easy to... So our two cars are our Jeep that we tow and our Subaru. So the rig has a V10 Triton in it. All three vehicles, I can change the oil without jacking it up or driving it up on ramps, which is really nice. So this rig, I'm not sure if I had told you or not, maybe about a year ago when I changed the oil the last time. This rig, changing oil on this one as opposed to our 2014 Thor race, this is a 2017. It's a different model, so this one weighs a ton more, and Ford came out with the new V10s, so I'm not sure if it's a redesign in the engine or because the chassis is bigger, but changing oil on this one is so much easier than the 2014. So we after that, I washed my hands. We loaded the rig up and getting ready for our 11-day trip through New Jersey. We had a campground site reserved for 2 nights. We have 2 different harvest hosts reserved at 2 different wineries in South Jersey. And then we have 5 nights at 2 different boondocker welcome locations. So on this trip, 11 days and just 2 nights in a campground. Not bad at all. So the last boondocker that we're going to has a dump station, which is phenomenal. So when we got there, well, I'll tell you all about that when we get there. How's that? Because we haven't even left yet. So we're driving down, excuse me, the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey. New Jersey, by the way, is the Garden State. If you live up north Jersey, Well, I'll just leave that where it is. So we're driving down and we were trying to figure out what the restrictions were for driving a rig, towing a Jeep on the Garden State Parkway. I know we had looked a while back, and between certain exits you weren't allowed to drive the rig. But that was a few years ago. So we looked online, and depending on which website you looked at, New Jersey Transit, New Jersey Department of Transportation, Garden State Parkway, we got different answers on each of the websites. So, and we noticed some of the websites hadn't been updated in a while. So we found a email address for one of the heads of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority, which oversees the Garden State Parkway. And we asked him about any restrictions for a 30-foot motorhome towing a Jeep on the Garden State Parkway. And he wrote back, there are no restrictions. So, as we were driving down, we passed two different state troopers, New Jersey state troopers on the Garden State, in an area of the highway that was once forbidden to drive a rig on it. Neither officer came out, pulled us over, none of them, neither of them. So, we drove down without incident from Hudson Valley, New York, to the New York State Thruway, where we paid a toll, the Garden State Parkways, where we paid tolls, to the New Jersey Turnpike, where we paid tolls, because we wanted to get to the campground early, get set up, so we could go over and pick up Kingston, Trish's grandson. So, we pulled in old Cedar Campground. We've stayed here in the past. They're doing a Halloween walk and trunk-or-treating. And we've never been in a campground for Halloween. And neither had Kingston. So, we thought this was going to be pretty cool. We pulled into the campground. Got our site, pulled in, plugged in our EMS surge protector from Progressive Industries, and the voltage on the post showed there was 136 volts. So our EMS would not allow any electricity into our rig. So we didn't have electricity, but the surge protector worked, and we did not want to plug into that post. So we went back to the office. They explained that they were full to capacity. I explained what happened. I said, I'm not staying in this site. And she stood there and looked at me for a minute or two, and I stood there and looked at her for a minute or two. And she said, okay, we have one site, and actually it's right next to yours, and we leave it reserved in case of emergencies. I don't know what that means. So we're going to move you over there. Unbelievable. The fall, yet they have a site for emergencies. Like I said, I have no idea what that means, other than what it's called. So we switched sites. That post was good. We drove over, we picked up Kingston, came back to the rig. We cooked up some T-bone steaks on the grill. Then the camping ground had a spooky walk where you went around a loop and plus like an access road to the loop, and had live actors, and it was all decorated, and it was just a lot of fun. So, got back to the rig, started up a campfire, and just relaxed. The next day we got up, we played miniature golf for a while. The temperatures were in the 90s, and this was middle of October. Unbelievable. So, unfortunately, the pool wasn't open. It would have been really nice to jump in the pool. So we, played miniature golf and some indoor pool, like billiards and such for the morning. We then walked from the campground to a local winery. They have a footpath. It takes you about 5 minutes to walk to the winery or so. Had a glass of wine. And then we went out to dinner, the three of us. And then back to the rig. Started pouring rain. So we pulled out cards and read in the rig in the rain. Very nice. The next morning, we talked to the campground to see if we could leave the rig there while we took Kingston back home. So this was Sunday. And they said, sure, no problem. And they explained where to park the rig. So I disconnected. I was going over to dump, and I wanted to wash my hands. And the water pump didn't work. So the site had water, so the water pump wasn't on. I had disconnected and no water pump. So I checked the fuses. All the fuses were good. I took off the access panel in the bedroom to get at the pump. And I could hear the pump running, but just not very loud, and there was no water coming out. So I checked the wiring going to the pump, and no issues there. I then turned off the water pump, closed the water valve coming out of the freshwater tank, took out the filter on top of the water pump, and voila, that was the problem. Cleaned out the filter, put it back in. It's like a screw-off cap on top of the water pump. It's all white, so you can't even see in it, which is a shame, because at least if you could see in it, you could see if it was dirty or clogged. But either way, put it back on. We had water. So we dropped Kingston off, we got back to the rig, and we drove a full half hour, if you can believe it. It was a tiring day from the campground to our Harvest Host day. We stayed at Bellevue Winery. I'll put a link in the show notes there's a discount for Harvest Host. If you follow that link, it'll save you money on the membership. Highly, highly recommend it. Love it. So, on the way down, we drove through Vineland, and there was a sign saying Vineland, New Jersey is the largest city in New Jersey. We were both shocked. Patterson is a big city. Trenton is a big city. Newark is a big city. And I'm sure these three cities are more populated than Vineland. But I guess they just don't cover as many acres. So there you go. Love driving around to learn all kinds of new things.